engagement with the Minister. Deputy Darragh O'Brien.
I'll do my level best to be brief. Minister, you've outlined, and I know your statement has covered a multitude there. I specifically want to focus first and foremost on the situation in Syria that you alluded to. And as the Chairman has said, and you said that we strongly, in the strongest possible terms, condemn the ongoing military actions of the Syrian regime, aided and abetted by Russia. But what I'm particularly concerned about is our government's response to that, and through you, our government's response. I want to ask you, when's the last time you actually met with the Russian ambassador? You met the Russian ambassador to convey the government and the Irish people's concerns over the ongoing situation in Aleppo, the use of bunker-busting bombs on hospitals, schools, medical facilities. And my party leader on the 4th of October directly asked the Taoiseach, and I quote, "Has the Taoiseach or the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade summoned the Russian ambassador or discussed the summoning of same to convey our views and raise the matter at European level with a request for common action?" And the Taoiseach replied, "The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade called in the Russian ambassador last Tuesday and left him in no uncertain terms as to how the country feels." And he repeated, "I repeat that our Minister last Tuesday called in the Russian ambassador, leaving him in no uncertain position as to the way this country feels and the humanitarian catastrophe that has afflicted Syria for some time, and Aleppo in particular." That didn't happen, Minister. You didn't call in the Russian ambassador. I put it to you, the Taoiseach misled the House. I met with the Russian ambassador to convey my party's concerns of his government's role in what's happening in Aleppo. Your party leader and your Taoiseach told the House that you called the Russian ambassador in, and you did not. And I would like to ask you, when is the last time you have met the Russian ambassador? In a response to a parliamentary question to Deputy Sean Crowe, it was further clarified then that two officials of your department conveyed the concerns. I'd ask you as well, was that meeting specifically about Syria? And again, why the Taoiseach felt it is appropriate to tell the House that you called in the Russian ambassador when you did not. And I'd like to know when you last met the Russian ambassador. I would like to, following on from that, if you could confirm that Ireland will vote against Russia's election to the UN Human Rights Council. And I'd also like to ask you from an EU perspective, because existing diplomatic efforts have not delivered a ceasefire, and the Lavrov-Kerry initiative, which probably is the way forward, what specific pressure can the EU apply on the warring parties? This is, as we all know, the most major humanitarian crisis on our borders here, and we could do a lot more. And I think at the very least it deserves that you, as Minister for Foreign Affairs, convey personally our disgust at what's happening there. Very briefly, Caherly, I will turn to the issue of the third country arrangements, and particularly the EU-Turkey arrangement, where you have said the EU has made substantial progress through the EU-Turkey deal. I reject that, reject it fully. You've given figures of 69 Syrians relocated to this country. Over a year ago, 14 months ago, this government committed to 4,000 people. And again, you have said that you hope to soon increase those figures to 40 to 60 per month. I heard that in March this year. It's not improving. And I also ask you again, can you confirm that the €20.9 million given by the Irish government on behalf of the Irish taxpayers toward the EU-Turkey arrangement, that none of that money is being used for security and containment measures, and that all of that money is being used towards refugee well-being and the security of refugees? Because my own belief, as Foreign Affairs spokesperson for Fianna Fáil, and my party's belief, is that these third country arrangements undermine completely the rights of asylum seekers and migrants and refugees, and that the EU-Turkey arrangement is one of a number of arrangements that the EU is looking to enter into. The most recent one, Afghanistan, that the EU are proposing to relocate 80,000 refugees to Afghanistan. Now, Turkey has its issues, but God Almighty, Afghanistan does likewise. So I'd like you to address those questions in the first instance, and I'll hopefully come back in at the second.
Sean Crowe, Maureen O'Sullivan and Senator Batchy. Deputy O'Brien.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. And Minister, no one, and I don't in any way, shape or form deny or question the department's commitment to, and the department's disgust and your disgust of what's actually happening in Syria. All I simply put it to you was that I would have thought, you've mentioned all the people that you've spoken to about it, right up to the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, but it's kind of, you know, it's strange and a little bit confusing that you wouldn't actually speak directly to the Russian government's own representative in this country. Everyone else you've spoken to, he's down the road in Rathgar. I would have thought you would have made it your business to convey personally the Irish government's concerns. And I put it to you again, and it's not semantics, because we were told on the 4th of October in a very clear statement that led everyone in this House to believe that, well, it's here, I have it, I have the transcript. That's what it says. I'll read it again. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade called in the Russian ambassador last Tuesday, but you didn't meet him. That's what it said, and you left him in no uncertain terms, but you didn't meet him. And I did ask the question, when have you met the Russian ambassador? I am aware that Russia aren't the only party to the problems in Syria, and US intervention in the region has also been detrimental. But the only thing I would say is that there is no other country that has more influence over the Syrian government and the Assad regime than Russia. And for you as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade not to actually sit down and meet with the Russian ambassador on this issue is inexplicable. And it's not semantics. It's your job. You should be doing it. And that's my view very clearly. I did also ask you again, would you confirm that Ireland will vote against Russia's election to the UN Human Rights Council? You didn't answer that question. And I know you've covered a lot in your statement here today, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you have a lot on your plate. But our job is to put forward our views on issues. There are many other elements in which you cover that I agree with your stance and I agree with the work that you're doing, but when I don't, I'll let you know. And that's my job to do it, and I would expect you to do likewise. What I did ask in relation to the 20.9 million that this government has given towards the third country arrangement between EU and Turkey, I have asked, and our committee has written to your department to confirm that all of that money goes exclusively for humanitarian exclusively on humanitarian aid. If that's the case, I'm not producing evidence to you, nor did I ever suggest it that I would, but I was asking for confirmation. And if that's the case, absolutely fine. But again, to put on record of the committee is that from my party's perspective and my own as opposition spokesperson on foreign affairs and trade, these third-party arrangements, in our view, undermine the very basic rights that refugees, asylum seekers actually deserve under international law, and isn't the way forward that we should be going. But I do thank you for your comprehensive and detailed statement. Finally, to conclude on Brexit matters, and I welcome the opportunity to attend on the 2nd of November. What I would say to you too, and I would ask you about the government's view on the fact that British Prime Minister Theresa May has seen fit, whilst it is a decision of a sovereign government, I think that it shows a lot for where her view and where London government's priority in relation to the north of Ireland is that the British Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, James Brokenshire, hasn't even been afforded a permanent seat at the Brexit Committee in London, at the Cabinet Subcommittee, and I think that speaks volumes. I welcome the fact of your engagement in the north of Ireland and going to Derry again to meet with stakeholders. I've spent a lot of time myself in the north over the last few months. But I would say as well is that the government, in my view, should approach Brexit from a position of strength as well. Britain, we are a big market for Britain. We have a €10 billion trade deficit with Britain. Our market, I put it to you as well, and them doing business with us is just as, if not more important, than our dealings with Britain and our business relationship with Britain. So I think that we should be careful as well as that we're not in some way being used either by the British to forward their position with our European partners.
For time, Deputy Sean Crowe.